In the soft glow of a September morning at St. Vincent's Medical Center, Dr. Ethan Carter began his shift as he always did. Yet something about the gentle light streaming through the hospital's windows gave him pause, a fleeting moment of stillness in his routine. At 31, Ethan had spent 6 years in the neurological intensive care unit, pouring his heart into caring for patients who couldn't speak or advocate for themselves. His brown hair, perpetually slightly tousled despite his best efforts, and his warm, reassuring smile had become a beacon of hope for families navigating their most harrowing moments. For Ethan, medicine was more than a profession. It was a calling, a belief that healing came as much from human connection as from clinical expertise. Room 314 housed a patient who had drawn the hospital's attention for 3 months, though not for typical reasons. Amelia Worthington, a 28-year-old businesswoman, had been in a coma since a car accident that gripped headlines, not for the wreck itself but for her identity. The Worthington family's wealth, amassed over generations of savvy investments, had made Amelia one of the nation's youngest female billionaires. Yet, in the face of a traumatic brain injury, her fortune was irrelevant. She lay motionless, her blonde hair fanning across the pillow like a golden halo, her breathing sustained by machines as her family kept a steadfast watch. While other doctors treated her with clinical precision, Ethan grew troubled by how she was becoming more of a medical enigma than a person to some staff. Ethan made it a habit to speak to all his coma patients, convinced that somewhere in their silence they might hear him. With Amelia he went beyond routine care. Each morning, as he changed her bandages, he shared stories of the weather, books he was reading, or small moments of beauty he noticed on his way to work. "Good morning, Amelia," he said softly, entering her room with fresh bandages, his voice as warm as if she could respond. "The leaves are starting to change outside. I have a feeling autumn might be your season. The way the light falls on you makes me think you love these quiet shifts in the world." Nurses Emily and Laura lingered at the doorway, observing with professional curiosity. They'd noticed Ethan spent extra time with Amelia, his hands always careful as he adjusted her position or checked her vitals. As Ethan gently peeled back the bandage on Amelia's arm, irritated by her he continued his one-sided conversation. "I read a study yesterday about how coma patients might hear more than we think. I want you to know you're surrounded by people who care, who are fighting for you to come back." Unbeknownst to Ethan, Amelia had been aware for weeks, trapped in a body that refused to obey her desperate attempts to communicate. She had heard every word he spoke, felt the distinct kindness in his touch compared to others, and come to cherish his morning visits as the only brightness in her terrifying darkness. She'd been battling to awaken, but her body seemed severed from her will. Until this moment. As Ethan's careful hands cleaned and rebandaged her arm, speaking to her with the same respect he'd offer any conscious patient, something shifted. His compassion, paired with her relentless determination, shattered the barrier holding her in unconsciousness. "Ethan," Amelia whispered, her voice faint but undeniable. Ethan froze, bandage in hand, his eyes snapping to her face. Her eyes were open, blinking slowly as they adjusted to the room's light. "Amelia," he said, his voice a blend of professional astonishment and personal relief that surprised even him. "Can you hear me? Can you see me?" "I can hear you," Amelia replied, her voice gaining strength. "I've heard you every morning. You talked about the leaves." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes as he pressed the call button, never breaking eye contact with her. "How long have you been aware?" he asked. "Weeks," she said, attempting to shift slightly. "I couldn't move, couldn't speak. You were the only one who treated me like I was still me." The room soon buzzed with medical staff, all astounded by Amelia's awakening, conducting tests and assessing her responses. Yet Amelia's gaze kept returning to Ethan, the man whose voice had anchored her through her darkest days. Dr. Catherine Stone, the head of neurology, performed a detailed examination, confirming a near-miraculous outcome. Amelia had sustained no significant cognitive impairment and was on track for a remarkable recovery. "In my 25 years, I've rarely seen someone emerge from such a prolonged coma with such clarity," Dr. Stone confided to Ethan. In the days that followed, as Amelia regained strength and prepared to leave the hospital, she and Ethan forged a friendship that felt both profound and effortless. Amelia learned that Ethan had entered medicine after losing his younger brother in an accident, driven to spare others the powerlessness he'd felt. Ethan discovered that Amelia was far from the detached businesswoman he'd imagined. She was introspective, curious, asking about his life with genuine interest and sharing her aspirations to use her wealth for meaningful impact. One afternoon as Ethan's shift ended, Amelia said, "You know, I've spent my life surrounded by people who saw me as a tool. Business partners after connections, suitors chasing my wealth, even friends who valued what I could offer more than who I was." Ethan settled into the chair by her bed. "That sounds incredibly isolating," he said. "It was," she admitted. "But lying here, hearing you talk to me every day, I realized you saw me as a person worth caring for, even when I couldn't give you anything in return." Ethan's face flushed slightly. "That's just how I believe people should be treated." "That's exactly why it matters," Amelia said softly. "You did it without expecting anything because it's who you are. Do you know how rare that is?" 2 weeks later, when Amelia was discharged, she invited Ethan to dinner, not as doctor and patient, but as two people connected by something profound, curious about what might come next. At a quiet restaurant, far from the world of high-stakes business dinners she'd known, Amelia said, "If you want to get to know me better, you need to understand it won't be simple. There will be media scrutiny, social pressures, people questioning your intentions." Ethan took her hand, his touch as gentle as it had been in her hospital room. "Amelia, for 3 months I spoke to someone I thought might never answer, might never know someone cared. If you're willing to take a chance on a doctor with a decade-old car who thinks a perfect night is cooking at home and reading medical journals, I can handle whatever comes with loving you." Their relationship grew with the same quiet patience Ethan had shown during her recovery. They found common ground in their desire to serve others, took joy in simple moments like museum visits and park strolls, and built a bond rooted in mutual respect and affection, untouched by her wealth or his status. A year later, in the same hospital room where Amelia had first awakened, Ethan proposed. "I fell in love with you when you couldn't speak," he said, "which sounds absurd until I explained that I loved the person I sensed you were, strong, resilient. Getting to know the real you has been even more incredible than I imagined." With tears in her eyes, Amelia said, "You loved me when I couldn't love myself, when I couldn't even speak for myself. You saw my worth when I was at my weakest. That's the kind of love that lasts." Their wedding took place in the hospital chapel, attended by many of the staff who had cared for Amelia. Dr. Stone, an ordained minister, officiated, speaking of love born in service and nurtured through devotion, of partnerships that embrace both strength and fragility. The Worthington Foundation, created by Amelia post-recovery, became a leading medical charity, funding traumatic brain injury research and supporting families through prolonged medical crises. Ethan continued his work at the hospital, bolstered by Amelia's support to pursue research that could guide others back from similar trials. When asked about their love story, Amelia often said, "People think Ethan saved me by being there when I woke up. But he saved me long before that, with his kindness and respect when I couldn't speak for myself. He reminded me I was worth caring about, and that gave me the strength to fight my way back." Ethan, watching his wife support families facing crises like hers, would add softly, "Love isn't always grand gestures or perfect moments. Sometimes it's about showing up every day, treating someone with care when they're at their most vulnerable, and believing in their value even when they can't see it themselves."